All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Alpha Podcast. Alpha Podcast. We're working on it. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. My name's Slow Wolf, Phil, the Slow Wolf, and we are back here with episode 3 of our podcast. Today we got a special guest on, and we got a couple of different topics to talk about, and some announcements to get started with. But before we got started, I wanted to go ahead and just shout out the music that I've been playing in the background while we were waiting. This is Death by Dice Volume 1. Put together on Bandcamp with Midwinter Minis and a variety of other artists that have produced the music. It's really good for games. It's good. It's that kind of got that grimdark aesthetic in a musical way, which is always a good time. So please go ahead and take a look at the album online and support him, because Midwinter Minis is a pretty cool dude to start off with, especially if you're getting started with like speed painting or whatever. Which we have plenty of time for, I guess, depending on how your pandemic situation is right now. Anyway, before we get totally crazy, let's go ahead and get started by introducing our two guests. Now, there's a couple of announcements I need to make. Very specifically, Aravor is off sick today. He couldn't make it for the podcast. And so as a result, today's podcast is going to take on a very different kind of tone. Why? Because Aravor was the one that continuously was the one organizing this thing. So as a result, instead, you've got me. You've got Joko, who's also part of the Alpha team as well. Joko, could you introduce yourself, please?
Hello, I'm Joko. I have been playing in Alpha for like season 4, I think. And yeah, that's me. I have been on podcast in the last season as well, so you might know me from that. Yep.
All right, and for our special guest today, we've got none other than a Space Wolf fanatic, a guy who is who popped up with Space Wolves at such a time that despite the fact that he lost in a game in 8th edition, people were more interested in what his list was at the time, and since then Space Marines have only gotten better. This is John K. from Goonhammer. Hello, how you doing, dude?
Hey, how's it going?
It's going well. Glad to hear it. And you've also done a variety of other writing for the Goonhammer team. Yeah, I'm excited to have you on, especially because of the start competing articles that you wrote about, like starting a team and how to practice and all that stuff. That's stuff that we can definitely talk about when we talk to you specifically. So yeah, today's episode, we're going to go quickly over a couple of different things. First and foremost, we're going to talk about terrain, and specifically why John K. would not have played in our league this time, unless if the terrain had changed to what it is currently. So I'm looking forward to getting his getting some ideas there and talking about the terrain that we've used in our Alpha League for this season. Then we're going to talk to John K. about his articles, about his gameplay, about what his experience has been online, and a variety of other things, including writing the articles for Team and all, like how to get on Team. And then we're going to start taking a look at some win rates. We're going to take a look at some lists. We'll close off with a Q&A, and then we'll see you guys next week. So, again, a couple announcements. Like I said, Arrowverse off sick, which is, a big sad, because that means that my organizational brain is gone. Arrowver was the one who practically organized the podcast. I just ran the show. So as a result, yeah, today's episode might be a little bit strange, and if it is, please do let us know what you liked, what you disliked, and how much you want Arrowver back. Past that, hey, we're on the last week of your Alpha games. I sincerely hope that all of you have finished your games. I still need to do every single one of mine, so my week is going to be Warhammer filled. Take a look at this space. To see some Tau games, because I decided I was going to go ahead and punch myself in the face multiple times and play a Tau list. And then, past that, unless there's any announcements from you, Joko, we can get started.
I think we can get started.
Okay, in that case then, today's big topic. Like last week we talked about a variety of different other lists and why they are the way that they are, and why I would close my Discord window. But more importantly, there we go, fixed it. The most important thing that we want to talk about this week, though, was just making sure that we talked about the terrain setup. Because terrain's important, it turns out. And if you don't have good terrain, you might not even want to play in an event. So let's go ahead and talk about terrain. And let's talk about the terrain in the Alpha League. Now, sadly, like I said, I haven't played any of my games yet, so I don't know the terrain layouts very, very well. That said, John has played a couple of games. Joko knows about all the different terrains, and we can talk about them. John, you said earlier, when we were just talking between the three of us, that you would have vastly preferred not to have played on the previous set of terrain, and that you really enjoyed looking at this one. Could you talk about this terrain a little bit? The terrain that we got for Alpha League Season 6, or yeah.
I mean, I chose not to play in any other Alpha League because I did not enjoy the terrain at all. But this one, when a couple of my teammates had played in it before,
Mm-hmm.
and some of the guys I helped coach had played in it, so he showed me the pictures for this one, and right away I was like, okay, this is like 100% night and day from what you had previously. You have like hard light of sight blockers all over the table. The terrain looks like it's built for 9th edition, not 8th edition. You have usable terrain, it's different. So it just seems a lot more functional. It's not just like AdMech just sit across the table and win the game. Because that is 100% what the last edition was. It was just, if you have AdMech, you can just sit there and not interact with the game.
Right, which was definitely an issue, specifically with 8th edition being as killy as it was. And I remember there was a lot of hullabaloo, at least at the beginning of 9th, where people, or at least pre-9th, just before it, when people were thinking that that was going to still be the case, that was going to be a very shooty edition because you could just eliminate line of sight. But that's not what happened. And at least not with the majority of terrain these days. And what you're saying effectively is that for Season 6, we've effectively come up with the times. We've finally caught up. It's 9th edition now.
Yeah, I mean, so far I've liked the tables that I've played on. I've gotten kind of lucky in my rolls where the random tables I've rolled have had the hard big L's that I could hide, Mortarian Ed Magnus behind, which probably isn't a real thing in real life. You'll never find a table like that, but yeah, it's if you have some of those L's, or even just lots of big ruins that are obscuring forests, there seems to be a lot of variation. Tables look a lot different. They look a lot cleaner.
Yeah.
And there's like usable, there's usable ways you can adjust your gameplay based on like the angles of the lanes you're firing down and the lanes you want to avoid.
Yeah, which
whereas the other one there was no lanes. It was the whole table essentially.
Yeah, you can actually hide your stuff in this terrain. My
Yep.
only problem with the map, I think it's lacks. I don't think there is any map with dense cover in it. I might be wrong, and I just played those maps that don't have dense cover. But yeah, that's my only issue with the.
that's
Any with dense
interesting.
cover.
I'm currently actually booting up the game so that way I can actually go ahead and take a look at these maps on the stream as well, and that way I can actually highlight all this stuff. But that's interesting because when it comes to like anything involving 9th edition terrain, I've found having like dense terrain and craters and stuff like that actually affects the game in ways other than just it blocks line of sight to be pretty goddamn important. to say the least.
It's pivotal. You need it.
Yeah, so if there isn't any dense terrain, that'll be a very interesting thing to like see, honestly. I'm curious about that one. So I'm gonna go ahead and additive load these things bit by bit by bit, and then that way we can take a look at each of the terrain tables on stream. And already I can tell that some of these are very, very interesting. So give me 2 seconds. I need to quickly create another scene so that I can at least have some games up and running, or at least show all this off. But based off of how important dense terrain is, what do you think is like an appropriate amount of terrain for a board anyway? Like, I know that GW's rule of thumb is, hey, does it have like 18 pieces on it roughly, or is like 1 piece of terrain per square foot? Does that work out? Does that work out properly, or is that just not enough, or is that too much, or is that even realistic?
I mean, I don't go with anything GW recommends. Let's be honest, right there.
That sounds like a hard and fast rule.
Yeah. Setting yourself up for success if you just go with everything they suggest.
It's
the quality of the terrain you have on the table, not the amount of terrain you have on the table.
Right. That makes sense. Although, like, with an amount comes like a certain amount of quality as well, just by shotgun effect. But I see what you're saying. Okay, in that case, then I'm gonna take a look at the first map that I've got here. This is the let me just triple check where I got it from. This is the table 4, mission 13 and 33 WTC tournament map. So it's purple. It's got 4 L's all over the place, and I've now got it on stream for everybody to see now. It is a crazy purple map, which is awesome. There are a couple of things here already that are worth mentioning. So first off, we need to quickly go on and figure out which of the missions this is. GT13 was one of them. Okay. And then the other one was GT33, which is this one. So both of them are in the corners. Okay, cool. What do you guys think about this map? It seems interesting. I really like the idea of the industrial vent, actually. Being kind of like exactly a crater. Oddly enough, not dense. The ruins are completely blocked off on the first floor, so even if they weren't obscuring, they just block line of sight completely. What do you guys think about this map?
I actually like it. I think I played 2 matches on this map, on this purple one, maybe just one. Like, again, as I said already, biggest issue for this map is there is not a single piece of dense cover in it. But otherwise, I think it's a really good map. It has enough good terrain that you can actually hide behind. You can play hide and seek with your opponent. You have like good firing lanes if you want to. And yeah, I just really like this map, except the purple base part because it never loads for me.
So I'm looking at this, and yeah, the lack of dense is interesting, especially because they have these little foresty bits popping up. But also because this industrial vent, because of the fact that it's smoking, which is, by the way, a cool little piece of, it was just a neat little piece of artistic flair. Yeah, that could easily have been dense. Now, that said, this is a very interesting map to me, just because the firing lanes from your deployment zone are almost garbage, but from almost anywhere else, like if you manage to get yourself into this side, closer to either player's long edge, effectively, you have across the table lines of sight in some instances. As soon as you get in the middle, you start getting some longer lines of sight around here and here. John, what do you think about this map?
The important things are the vents are, I believe, if you hover them, difficult ground.
They are.
So that's a huge thing you need to have, because this map is extremely punishing to like a gun line. Even a mobile gun line, it's extremely punishing, which I'm fine with because I fucking hate the uninteractive lists that just sit in their corner. But
sorry,
it's really bad against I mean, the middle is good because if you're a Space Marine, you just pick Osa Moment and you win the game by just sitting in the middle. But
yeah.
The outside, I like to have you like to have difficult terrain on every map because then it slows down like Thunderbolt Cav, almost anything without fly. So
yeah,
it's a good piece of terrain to be adding some interactivity to it.
Now,
Normally
it's interesting that the obscuring, the difficult ground you just I just mentioned, like as far as logistics go, like it forces bigger models that are still affected by area terrain to have to go through the middle in this L to effectively avoid it. You can't really sneak around the side with, say, a knight or whatever to try to get at these objectives over here and over here. So they're kind of defended from charges. But most of the time, infantry can just maneuver through the entire middle of the field without any downside, and anything with fly does the same.
Yep. So, normally, I know that when I design tables, I put, I use, instead of those manhole covers, I use forests, because they're also -2 shoot over, so that you don't have those long lines of sight across the table.
Yeah.
Anytime you draw a line of sight across the table, you really want it to go through the -1 to hit, so that you can't just sit there and not interact. But this table's good because if let's say you're against a gun line and you're more of a combat army, you can hide your entire army so that you can't just be wiped off the table and not even get to play the game.
Yeah.
So you do have that big L there. You have a big L over there. The lanes are good for you, and it forces people to go into the middle of the table,
or at least to cover it and to make themselves available to be, dealt with in some way, shape, or form, right? So, yeah.
Really good map for Space Marines and demons.
Yeah, well, every map's a good map for demons. They don't care about cover really all that much, so long as they can hide or hide behind a -1.
Hard to put Nurglings, that's good.
Yeah, exactly. And even then, like, these area bits of terrain over here are, defensible, obscuring, all that stuff. And if I'm not incorrect, if my eyeball hasn't cheated me here, yeah, that circle extends to past the point where it's obscuring. So if you can hide a Nurgling right there, just in the base, keep everything else behind that, you can have Nurglings controlling this objective completely outside of line of sight for the most part.
Yep.
Yeah, that's nasty.
Like that.
that's nasty. But it's good to know. So that's another trick you guys can go ahead and use to your advantage. And that place is actually fairly safe from a front charge because of this difficult ground here. Okay, let's go ahead and see what the next one is then. I'm going to go ahead and boost ourselves over to another purple map. So long as this doesn't double additive load, which it probably will because I've done something silly. Yup, absolutely. I'm going to have to reload this whole thing. But, go to the workshop, go to the map base, open it up. Cool. Let's try that again. Confirm for gaming. And then additive load the next purple map. So this one's for missions 12, 21, and 31, which probably all have the same kind of deployment zone. And it's very similar. Purple, all over the place. For your missions, you're looking at GT 31. Yeah, so this is the Dawn of War deployment from previous ones. Could just not load the map. It's not like you need the base. You know what? You bring up a good point, except for I want to see where the objectives and deployment zones are. The pants. I appreciate the good point there, but yeah, that's the thing. So for this map, again, no dents. The industrial vents are just like covering difficult ground. For the majority of these maps, I'm going to assume that they are Dawn of War. Yeah, okay. And that the objectives tend to be placed in interesting places. This is where you get your scorched ground and all that stuff. So, initial reactions. What do you think about this map, Joko?
I like it. And I actually like the fact that they kind of customized the maps for the deployment zones. So
you kind of have to.
Like, yeah, you kind of have to. Again, I really like the difficult grounds ones. As John said, it slows down armies, except if you are Harlequins.
Because Harlequins are cheating.
Yep.
Harlequins don't ignore that.
With fly, they do.
They have flip belts, which allow them to ignore the vertical distance when crossing terrain, but not the actual terrain feature, I thought.
Yeah, so they suffer that penalty for moving over that.
Yeah.
They do. But they mostly in their gunboats, so they're not really going to care about it.
It's just the big blobs of warriors and stuff like that, or whatever you call those things.
The troops, yeah.
Yeah, the troops don't ignore it. Some people like to think they do, but they don't.
Yeah, that's actually a very interesting point, which is actually a big deal for their charges, too, considering they need to get them off. This map and the way that it deploys to me is interesting, and far more, like, for me as a Tau player, I look at this and I say, okay, there's actual firing lines I can work with that I'm quite happy with, especially with the list that I've got, which has a decent number of smart missile systems. So as a result, I have some reach, but I also have lots of good lines of sight to aim through here, if they aren't hiding behind this piece of terrain properly. Like there's definitely some options, and more importantly, I've got coverage on this objective here. I've got easy range on this objective here with smart missiles, so you have to put something durable there. And then I've got some decently defensible objectives usually on my side. That said, it is still really good for melee armies, considering that they can hide behind this L really easily, and then just move out and charge whatever is inside the deployment zone really safely. And then on this side, it's interesting because the difficult ground is really good defensively because it's on the red side of the board. I don't mind this as a shooting player. It still definitely scares me a bit, but like I can imagine a Space Marine player here is just like, okay, yeah, I take one whole flank. I just deploy most of my stuff here, move up into here, absolutely dominate it, and then move around and kill the rest of the map from here because it's very, very safe for an infantry-heavy Space Marine army to just sit here and take over whatever they want.
This map is not good for combat.
Not at all, eh?
If I was playing Space Wolves on this map, I would just essentially think I'm going to lose if I don't go first, and even if I do go first, I'd probably lose.
Really?
There's no lane, there's nowhere to hide on this map. You can hide in your deployment zone, turn 1, but then your Thunderwolf Cav are slow because then they got to go around that wall. And I mean, if you're playing Space Wolves and you're not playing Thunderwolf Cav, you're losing anyways.
That's so different from what we were talking about last week. You and Trevi would have words.
I mean, people can disagree, but that's like I don't think Thunderwolf Cav are good. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think Space Wolves are good either.
Really?
There's a reason I'm not playing them.
All right, well, we can definitely talk about that when we start talking to you specifically.
So, like, if you were a gunline army, you just have to put all your stuff in that far left corner, and then you can draw a line of sight to that objective where the Space Marine wants to hide very easily. There's no line of sight in the middle. You can draw a line of sight straight down the middle. You can draw a line of sight to every single one of those objectives, except for the back ones, which you should never be able to do anyways. So it's pretty rough, unless unless like the gunline person were to deploy their like non-mobile gunline all in one corner, then you can deploy and move to counter that. But if they're somewhere in the middle of the table, that's really rough.
It's worth mentioning that without indirect fire, though, these walls here still have to follow true line of sight. Even if you're inside of them, there are no windows or holes to them. So if you deploy your entire shooting army behind this, you can't shoot through it.
Yeah, you're just gonna move around it though.
Yeah, I mean, you can poke your head out here, for instance, right? A good shooting, like a good moving unit, could probably poke its head out here, get a good line of sight down the middle this way. But at that point, they're still very vulnerable to an army coming down here, hiding in this ruin here, and just sitting on an objective where you can't touch them. I think that there are some plays, but yeah, this is definitely a little bit safer for the shooting army than the last map was.
It's definitely better for shooting, but I don't think that that's bad or good, because the last one was really good for combat. This one is not as good for combat. Like, you can't have every single map be perfect for combat. You can't have every single map be perfect for shooting. So it's good. Like, it's good to have variety. I just I would be really, really worried if I was on this table.
Yeah,
If I was running this standard like 10 Thunderwolf Cav and whatever else, it would just be. I know for a fact I need maximum advance. I need fully buffed unit, and I need them to make a mistake.
Yeah, and I think that that's maybe a big aspect of these maps, is that knowing where your army has weaknesses on it is important, but being able to see blunders in your opponent's play, just like in chess, is one of those things that will make you able to win situations that would normally be a lot tougher to win. So, yeah, if your shooting army opponent decides to deploy all in here, then you
It's
just
over.
grab these two sensors of the board, and then like you get all the points. Like they can't really stop you at that point, right? So yeah, it's worth making sure that you're making correct choices and seeing whether or not your opponent is doing some mistakes.
Like, it's not a bad map. It's not a good map. For me personally, I'd be scared because I'm a combat player. But you can't always have everything be perfect for combat. It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
There's many aspects of the game.
Okay, let's move on to the last of the purple maps. This one, I believe, is just purple map, but for the last kind of deployment zone, which will be the Hammer and Anvil Dawn of War, if I have to guess. So, this was for missions 12, 22, and 32. Go figure. by process of elimination, we've gotten this far. So, Scorched Earth. Oh no, it's slightly different. 22 is Battle Lines. There we go. And 32 is Sweeping Clear. So we got one Corner one Dawn of War one, and one Hammer and Anvil one for this map. Which means that this map is meant to be played pretty much any which way possible. That makes this very interesting to me, because that means that the terrain itself is probably, like, it's less focused, and because it's more generalized, it offers more opportunities to find angles of attack, which means that it's not a very defensible map, I think, by definition. Joko, what do you think?
I don't like this map, to be honest. There is like a huge shooting lane. It's not
Massive
bad.
shooting lane.
Like there is still it's still better than last season's open shooting gallery. I don't know what was the map, but yeah, it's not as bad. But this is probably my least favorite map so far because of the huge line of sight in the middle.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's really good defensively if you want to keep something behind a wall. There's always like one of these big L's in the way, but this middle area is absolutely a shooting gallery.
Also, on this map, I don't think the vents are gonna do anything because they are way too much in the corners or like in the edge of the map.
Yeah, the vents don't do anything here, but I mean, if they were alternated and they were where you're currently hovering, they would matter a lot more.
Yeah,
They would matter a massive amount. They would completely kill a Space Wolf army.
Yeah, I have a feeling that if the vents were like more around in here or whatever, that would make it like that would absolutely neuter any and all melee armies. It just wouldn't have.
It would hurt a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind this map because I can see places that you can basically take your time with the game. So it's not bad for it's. When you first look at it, it's good for shooting because you have that massive lane through the middle of the table.
Whoop, whoop, yep.
But you have those two ruins in the center. You have these huge hard L's. So basically, you just take your time. You know that you're not playing the game to arrive turn 2. You're not playing the game to arrive turn 1. Well, actually, you're trying to arrive turn 2, dominate the board, and then turn 2/3, that's when you arrive, because you can take your time. You can step from one ruin to the next ruin, put all your stuff in the next ruin, force them to shift all of their shooting to try and shoot you, and when they shift it all towards you, you have a straight line at their shooting, and you just dive at them the next turn.
Yeah, and it's worth
So
mentioning that all these lighter ruins are still obscuring, right? So you can definitely hide behind them.
Oh yeah, you can hide a massive amount of combat behind those.
Yeah.
So I like it a little bit better. When you first look at it, you think it's going to be really good for shooting, but I could definitely take advantage of that table.
Yeah, I look at this from my perspective, and I'm like, man, this sucks. Like you said, there's a lot of good lines of sight for shooting, but because of all the places where there are to hide, the vast majority of my shooting is going to have to be extremely riskily placed to be able to do anything.
Yep.
If my opponent's over on the blue side and I'm deploying red, like, what, I can deploy everything behind an L2, but then after that, my Riptides poke out, do a little bit of shooting, and then go back behind cover with the Nova Charge, and then what objectives have I secured? What have I actually done this game? So it's definitely a game where if I'm playing against a very durable opponent like Demons or Death Guard or the Mortarion Magnus kind of list, I'm in trouble.
This table is a dream for the Mortarion, like the Mortarion Magnus and the 2 birds.
Yeah.
Like this is I don't want to say an auto win, but unless you deny warp time somehow or it fails, you're dead.
Yeah.
Because you can put them behind that big L in your deployment zone, and you can reach the entire table.
Yeah, because you fly out, you do all your damage, get warp time back with a really reliable warp time, to be honest, and then you're good to go. Space Marines have a bit of a rougher time here going for something like Oaths of Moment. Because of the fact that the Oath of Moment literally puts you right in the center, I think that would be a mistake for secondary. As much as the center is something you want, it is extremely risky, and you kind of have to prepare for it. It's like putting up it's like taking the center board and then just being like, okay, well, I'm just gonna leave it there. I'm not gonna move any knights or bishops to take care of it. I'm gonna put my aggressors right in the middle, but without an apothecary, without the fire support behind it, without inceptors in your back pocket. Those aggressors are not only going to die for nothing, they're going to die and you're going to get nothing out of it in terms of being able to get people exposed and hurt. So you definitely need to have some play to make sure that if you put something in the center that you're going to have a ridiculous counterpunch to compensate for it. That said, it is the odd objective out. If you don't have this one, there's no way to really get hold more. Because all the other objectives in a lot of these maps are hidden behind these big L's. So, yeah, interesting stuff.
Yeah, Space Marines are going to take Oaths of the Moment here. It's a guaranteed you're going to score max.
Really? Okay.
Nobody, unless you're against Demons or somebody that can really go up there and fight you. Space Marines want to be controlling more anyways. You're just going to deploy your infiltrators inside one of those ruins and outside one of those ruins, and then you're going to move them there turn 1, and then all your entire army is just going to sit somewhere around that center. And then turn 2, you're in on them, because Marines are by nature durable.
Yes.
So you're gonna take that OS anyways. It's just you already have to be in the center, so it's already rewarding you even more for being in the center. If there wasn't an objective there, you would never take it, because of that the line of sight. It's too risky. You're not getting anything for being there. So I think because that objective's there, you're gonna take it because you have to be there anyways. You want to win board control. You're gonna take that risk.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. That said, there's nothing so durable in this game that can just stand in the middle and survive absolutely an entire army's worth of shooting. So make sure you do it intelligently. But chat absolutely agrees with you, John. So that's good to know.
The internet rarely does.
The internet rarely does? Are you kidding? That seems rude. All right, let's move along to the next map. And I'm going to see if I can't go through these a bit more quickly. Now that we kind of have a general gist of what we're looking at, we're going to take a look at another 6 or so maps, and then just kind of discuss the terrain in general at most.
I think you should look at not one of one map for one table for every mission, but other tables for one mission, so we can look through other tables. And
yeah,
played on this one just today.
Oh, you play on this one just today. And again, there's armored containers, which are obstacles, give light cover, they're scalable, and have an exposed position, which is actually a neat terrain feature. I love crates, actually. I think they're really, really cool. True line of sight blocking coupled with some light cover, with the ability to hop on top and expose yourself but get really good lines of sight. I like it. Industrial vents, again, they're not dense terrain. Some very interesting ways that this map could be played. I'm going to quickly just check which missions this is used for. This is for missions 13 and 33. That's it. Which is definitely a strong way to play. I need to actually read the numbers from a distance. There we go. So this is, again, the corners kind of thing. But I imagine that most of the other maps are going to be laid out in a very similar way, just this one's themed around having crates as well. What did you think about this map when you played on it? Also, cinematic, I like that they have all the bodies all over the place. I'm sad that they're every single one of them, Ultramarines. But, that's how it is. So...
Actually...
oh, wait, no! There's orcs!
That is a full orc
2 days ago.
Good. The Bagel are dead. So at this point, I like this map too. I think there's a lot of cool things going on with it. John, what are your initial impressions after having played on it today?
I mean, deployment is kind of rough, but other than that, it's a pretty standard table. You will see this deployment in real life all the time.
Yeah, I've made this board in real life.
Yep, I set up. I have a home table that looks exactly like this, except I have woods, so I don't use because woods they offer a lot more -2 to -1 to shoot through, -2 movement. So I just typically will use woods instead, just at home, and in most of my tournaments. So, but it's a standard table. It's good for it can be bad for shooting because you have those really, really hard line of sight blocking pieces in the middle, and then you have the hard line of sight blockers in your deployment zones. If I were to make a change, I would have probably changed the ones in the middle to obscuring, but not hard obscuring.
Yeah, having line of sight that you could get through it if you managed to touch the wall.
So knights can't hide behind it, Primarchs can't hide behind it, Demacarians can't hide behind it. It's fine in your deployment zone, but or it's fine either in your deployment zone or outside your deployment zone. But having it in both ways, it can be pretty rough time for shooting.
Yeah.
If you go up against that wrong army, it's rough.
I look at this and I'm beginning to start seeing some themes of the terrain that Joko, I think, described the two of you described plainly early on. They don't have a lot of dense terrain, if anything, but they do have a lot of line of sight blocking, which kind of compensates for it. At least in all the maps that we've seen. With this map in particular, it seems like it'd be one of those things where if you have enough long-range shooting, you could set up a shooting base right around here, get line of sight on one of their home objectives. And I believe that this is the mission where you get to move their... this is the mission where you get to move around the objectives, depending on who's going where and stuff. So you could have this objective move back into the vent, or this objective move back behind a wall. It really depends. But, this is an odd one. There are two places where you want your shooting to be, which is, on this side here. The mirror side over here, because then that we have line of sight through the middle and can cover it and potentially deny points that way. And then the other one would be over on this far side here, so you can get line of sight on their home objective, and still be able to cover this corridor, which is an important corridor for, just anybody trying to get onto this objective for whatever reason. There's definitely a lot of weaknesses for a shooting army, but I think that they can be played around because a fighting army also has a bit of a hard time. The armor containers do block their movement. They have to climb over them. They're not breachable. It's not, all perfect for combat armies either due to the difficult terrain, the containers, and all that other stuff. They only have, one free avenue of movement through the middle, and then that's it. So as a result, it's okay, if you can manage to cover your shooting position here, that free avenue of movement is gone, and then what? So I think that there's a lot of interesting things going on with this map, and I like it because of that. If that all made sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's a strong map. Oath of the Moment, also incredibly huge here. The fact that you can move those objectives, though, really hurts the shooting because you're gonna. The first thing you're gonna do is pick up that objective at the back there behind that L, and you're gonna move it in front of that L so that if shooting wants to sit there, they're gonna have to sit there on the other side of that wall, meaning they have to be closer to you. Because every time if you're a combat army, you want them to be as close to you as possible. And you're just gonna run straight at them, right through the first ruin, get your Osa moment, right through the second ruin, straight at them. Yeah,
and it's a shame too because that does really hurt. And although your opponent will get the chance to potentially pick their other objective, bring it safer, putting it in the side of this crater area, and then take one of your objectives and put it someplace where they can shoot it better.
They're going to move that other one right in the open.
Yeah, as soon as they possibly can, and then that way it's okay, cool, we've kind of offset our now glaring problem, which is this one, which if we're taking priority is like, I mean, and you're taking priority. If you're playing this mission, you don't take priority objective, you're being very silly. You must have a much better secondary in mind, and I'm not sure if that secondary exists. So yeah, it's definitely a weird one. But I like the map overall, and I think that this is probably a good example of what we're talking about when we're saying that these maps are actually quite strong. Let's take a look at one more map, and then we can go into some conclusions, I think, because we've seen quite a lot of maps now at this point. And
if you had a map from last season, you should pull that up.
I will go ahead and pull that up right now.
I will roast it.
All right, so let's roast one of the ones I actually won on that I should not have won on. So, welcome to the gazebo map. So, it's worth mentioning a couple of things. One, when I played this mission, it was Corners deployment. I was playing against Space Marines, which were Iron Hands with an Apothecary and all that stuff, and just a bajillion Intercessors. And that the center bit is a dense ruin, which is probably one of the coolest pieces of terrain I've ever seen. So there's lots of line of sight through it, but as soon as you get into it, and there's an objective right in the middle of it at the time, as soon as you get into it, we can see in. But it still gives you dense and light cover, and it's defensible, so you can't charge it for free either, which I thought made it very interesting, because at least at that point, it's a well-defended piece of terrain. And the guy had Grav Devastators in it for like a good 2 turns before I could finally remove them. There's lots of good craters all over the place. I like the woods, although I was able to sit my broadsides in it, and they were able to just sit there all game. Which kind of sucked for my opponent, because he had to foot slog across a good chunk of the field. I liked this map, but maybe I shouldn't have. John, what do you think about this map?
It's garbage. It's like the kind of map you would see when you go to a narrative event, and they're like, "Oh, this map looks so thematic," and then you're like, "Sure, dude, get the fuck out of here."
Oh, no.
So the problem with the center one is that it's circular, and circular things don't really block line of sight because they're circular, so you can just walk around it and draw lines of sight. The second you toe into it, everything can see you. There's an objective in the middle of it, which typically you're not supposed to place objectives in the middle of things like that.
No. I think this is the deployment we have.
The lines of sight through this thing are so massive that, I would feel real bad for like a night player, which is weird because almost nobody feels bad for night players. But night player, someone with Magnus, a standard just like Thousand Suns list, any Space Wolf list essentially is just going to get roasted on this map unless they go first. And even if they go first, it's like look at the center of that map. It's exactly why I told the guys I was helping build lists for this event to just run AdMech and Raven Guard.
Because this center part right here is just obscene. Yeah, that makes sense. And if anything, again, I was playing Tau like a smart man. And I somehow ended up coming out on top against Space Marines.
Guard, Iron Hands, something with a strong gun line there, especially AdMech that's mobile. They're just going to absolutely pick up everyone's army on that map.
There was a guard list that I went up against that had Custodians too from last season, and it was on... I know which map it was, if I could just see. I think it's this one. Yeah, it is this one. Yes, please load. And we were playing in Dawn of War deployment. This map I actually liked too. I thought that had a lot of good dents. I thought that had a lot of good cover.
This was actually one of the best maps in last season.
Yeah, the only thing that I thought was confusing was, does this middle part count as being a part of this larger terrain piece, or is it just a hole in the middle? Anyway, it was like actually interesting, although these pieces of dense terrain on the sides here made very little sense overall to me. And I lost horribly because, Custodes charging a Tau gun line makes Tau sad. So, the thing is, the maps here do have like a more diverse sense of terrain. Like, we've got light cover, we got obscuring, we've got ruins, we've got dense, we've got forests, we've got not craters, but we've got a lot of difficult ground in the middle. There's like a through line in the middle as well for melee armies to be able to like walk through fairly easily. We got a lot of verticality, which could allow for good lines of sight at the expense of your cover. Like, I thought that this map again was pretty sick, but There are like actual firing lanes and everything as well. Being able to shoot across the map here is fairly easy. You can see everything from like here along like a third of the board. Which I mean meant that they were visible to a third of the board, but that's not the point. It seems that the terrain philosophy between last season and this season is very different in that the last season they wanted maps that like worked-ish, but definitely looked a certain way. Whereas this new season they're like, screw it, here's as functional as it gets, and we're gonna keep it to like a low variety of terrain. Does that in order to try to keep this to being as balanced as possible? Does that sound right, or is that an unintelligent and ignorant point of view? What do you guys think?
I think that you just didn't, like, the people that made this at the time didn't functionally understand how 9th edition was playing with terrain yet, and which is fine because 9th is new, and when I first started playing, like, before 9th came out, like, it took me like 40 games to understand what was the function, like what was the most ideal thing, and lots of discussion on it.
Yeah.
The table looks fine until you actually put models onto it and put objective markers on it, because I've tested my Space Wolves into an AdMech Raven Guard list on this map, and I was tabled turn 2. Because there it is. There's another bad one. Basically, anytime any of those ruins, they're nice, hard, obscuring line of sight blocking until you toe into them. Then there's windows throughout the entire thing so that they can see you. The problem is you can't deploy so far back behind those to be functional. Like you're essentially taking yourself out of the game. So all of that stuff was just, you could just fire straight through it anytime you towed through it, and all the stuff on the outside is non-functional. It's just, there's no point to it being there. The woods are good. The center thing is weird because I had the same problem where I didn't know if I was in the middle of it. Was I in it? Was I not in it? It makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and doing GW ruling of footprint here would help, but also is not typically what people have done.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely the better of the tables from last season, but still very punishing. So like the tables now are much better. At least you have like first floor, all the windows are blocked out, or there's ways around it, or you have crates, something that will give infantry some hope of surviving for a turn.
Yeah. So overall, terrain obviously in this season is better for competitive play. On that, we're all completely agreed.
Do you think it looks better?
And it also looks better. Okay.
Tables look way better. The mats they use look good. They're thematic. You have like effects and stuff like that. Like visually, they look better. This looks cluttered, and it doesn't look like a competitive map. When you load one of those other ones, they look put together like that.
And they do have shadows and stuff too, which is sick. Yeah.
That looks like it was meant to be played by 2 competitive players.
And looks matter, folks. This is a hobby about things that we paint to try to make look nice. So it's best to try to replicate it as much as possible in a digital format as well.
And people always complain about terrain. I've run many events in real life and online, and people will complain no matter what. So, you know, if people complain about your terrain now, okay, it's vastly improved from last season. Like, you can only get better, and it's a learning experience, so, you know, it is what it is. It's way better than it was before.
Agreed.
Yep, definitely.
But I don't want to turn off the shadows, chat. The shadows look nice. I know this is Sunbox. I don't want to get rid of it. Yeah, no, I do agree that these look really, really good. I like the effect that they put into them. I think that there is less variety on each map, but that does mean that it's more... like, it's more tactically accessible. You're able to actually understand what the map has, and you don't have, like, 15 million different terrain things you need to keep track of. You need to keep track of ruins, +2. Probably. Most, right? You got woods and crates, or crates and craters /dense / those industrial vents or whatever. So it makes it's a lot less brain power to immediately work with. There's a lot less arguing at the table as well. So from a soft perspective, it's also really clear what's going on, and that's important too, I think. And again, these maps they work really, really well, and there's lots of tactical options throughout all of them. A couple things to keep in mind. What are some tips that you guys would give to somebody who's looking at this map for like to add a map for the first time as to how they are supposed to deal with it? Like, if I was to sit down and look at this map right now, the way it is deployed, what are some things that I should be keeping track of to make sure that I am deploying correctly? What are some features that I should be keeping, that I should make a priority to keep in mind? And what are some pieces of advice that you guys would have for deploying in in maps like this, or like things that you look for when you're deploying? Joko, you go first.
Okay, this pretty much really depends on the army.
All right.
Because there is a huge difference between if you are playing Space Marines or if you are playing Xenos faction or if you are playing Chaos. So, yeah. Also a huge difference between missions as well.
Yeah.
Like best advice, try to not give up. Like try to go first, because if
Just
you
go first.
Yeah, go first. Just go first.
So that's the best advice I can give. Otherwise, try to hide most of your important units, so they can't shoot you off the board first turn. Or if you are against the melee army and you are shooting, try to back deploy a bit. So, and always pre-measure everything. Like make sure that they can't charge you the first turn. Stuff like this, like the little things you have to pay attention to.
Right. And how like the little things matter so much though? Like how often do those little things like come to end up being like the most important part of deployment? Like, are there any big things, I guess, that are more important that are like important, or are all the little things just as important as the rest of them? So when it comes to like line of sight and stuff, that seems like a really big thing to me. Just because like I guess I shoot a lot. But you know what? I don't know. I'm not even sure what I'm asking anymore. Sorry, Joko.
Basically, with deployment, you can't win a game in deployment, but you can for sure lose a game in deployment.
Exactly.
So you have to, like, it's hard to answer a question like this because, like he's saying, it completely depends on mission, your list, their list, the quality of the opponent you're playing. If you don't know them, you assume that they're top tier. If you do know them, then base it basically on their. Like, there's so many different things that go into how you deploy this map. I will deploy this map against different people different ways because, you know, I know I can have some leeway with how I play this game. I played this very map against one of the guy who was at the top of my division or pod, and
Right.
It was very good for me because I can put Magnus and Mortarion behind both of those L's. And,
Yeah.
He knew it was going to be bad for him if he went second, and he went second. And we both knew it was essentially over. It's just this map, you have to pre-measure everything. You have to look for your angles. You should have a plan going. You basically have your plan going in, which is harder because the maps are random and the mission is random, so it's tough. So the second you roll and you know you're on that map, you have to start thinking, what's my plan? And you have to have a plan before you pick your secondaries. Once you pick your secondaries, you have to follow through with the plan.
Right.
So, you just have to be clean on your deployment, measure everything, and then follow through with the plan, whether it's good or bad.
Would you say that it's probably a good idea then for somebody that's like entering in an online league like this, if they post their maps ahead of time, to actually like try practicing deploying on the maps?
I mean, if you want to win games, yeah.
So that seems like a big thing. Practice deployment. Okay.
Like, deployment is one of the biggest parts of this game because, like I say, you can't win a game, but you can lose a game. And most newer players that don't have 100+ games in 9th edition, they will just. I can't even tell you how many people I've just beat because they've deployed wrong, or didn't understand threat ranges or any of that stuff. You have to. I mean, this is why you have a team. You know, that's the importance of a team. You have a team so that you can take these photos of all of the different tables and post them in your chat, and then ask people how do specific armies play on these maps? What's good? What's bad? That's how we came up with my list. The second I saw this table, I said, "Oh, we're running Morty and Magnus because this is like
big walls." Like big walls.
Morty Magnus absolutely dumpster Marines, and you have big walls. As long as Eradicators can't shoot them, they're good. So it's these stuff like that. You can just look at deployments and know, oh, this will work on this and this won't work on this.
Right.
Space Wolves, not like the Space Wolves with Thunderwolf Cav, they're not that great on this because you have a lot more hard, big L's everywhere, and they got to go all the way around those. So White Scars, Vanguard Vets, they're just pure money on these. So it's just, there's so much information in deployment, so you should be practicing all the time if you want to take this seriously.
Yeah.
If you want to win games, you have to practice like you want to win the games. You have to put the time in. That's why I argue with people on Reddit all the time, because I'm arguing with some idiot that has played one game in 1 month, and I've played fucking 10 games that month, and they don't get it because there is a massive gap. And the second you start playing against another good player that does this and if you come to that table and that player has deployed his army and your army in every possible case scenario, you're in an uphill battle there.
Yeah.
And good players will do that, especially in these online tournaments where they know ahead of time the list they're playing against, the person they're playing against, and the maps they're playing on. You can do all sorts of things. There's so much more information that you should be using. Now, lots of people don't have the time to do that.
Chat came up with a good point in that last season's maps had a serious disadvantage in that there were 6 of them to deal with 9 different missions. Where ideally each map needs to be tailored to each kind of mission because of the way that objective placement works. And that one of the strongest advantages that this new set of maps has is that each one of them is designed around a specific set of missions. Yep. And that just makes sense to me.
Yep.
The other thing that what you talked about made sense to me was that I immediately made a connection between deployment and openings in chess. Just because, again, I've been practicing it a lot recently because go figure the Queen's Gambit made it important in my life again. And I'm like, hey, it's like just as important as knowing your openings. If you don't know how you're going to deploy in certain maps or if you don't know how you're going to use certain terrain features like that fast, you're already wasting time. And you're going to make mistakes if you don't have that stuff kind of automatically down. Yeah, no, that just makes perfect sense to me. So thanks, chat, for that little bit. Professor Grant has asked a question, but I'd like to hold that question until we get into a proper interview. Oh my gosh, chat. We're going to go ahead and get into an interview with you specifically, John. So, John, first off, thanks for giving all that feedback on the maps and for talking us through all the different philosophies and everything with it. You are an author at a part of the authoring team at Goonhammer.
Yep.
Could you explain how that came to pass? Like, how did you end up on the Goonhammer team?
I mean, there's a lot of guys and girls, but basically, I play against I play against 2 guys primarily, Gunham, Chase, and then I play against Kyle Thompson. Both of them are authors. They do the I can't remember it at the moment. The Hear Me Out articles for Goonhammer, which I used to love, and so I'm in the same region as them, so I would play them all the time, basically. And one of the articles that I got featured in was me getting dumpstered by an Iron Hands list as Space Wolves, and basically I helped them with some advice for Space Wolf stuff. And then basically they just asked me to be part of their team and start writing for them once they figured out I could actually do English well. Well enough.
Doing English good is hard. Trust us, folks.
Yes. I am a king of run-on sentences.
Oh, jeez.
So luckily they have a huge editing team there, and they make me look way smarter than I am. Yeah,
so at the time, you said they came up against an Iron Hands list. I assume that this was right during their heyday, like right after September of last year.
It was
before last year.
It was in February, right after LVO. So
okay.
The Leviathan list had just basically dominated LVO, and then I played a list that was similar but different. Played by Kyle, and Kyle's won multiple GTs. That was his first major that he won, and I played him round 4. We were both undefeated. And then I set up to go first, and he rolled. This is when you could still seize the initiatives, and he rolled, seized on me, and just absolutely dropped me.
Ouch.
I just steamrolled the rest of the players and went 5-1.
One bad 6 equals a bad time.
I wouldn't have won that one anyways. Let's be honest. he deployed like the second I saw him deploy, I was like, oh, this is why you win events.
Makes
You're
sense.
really smart. And it was I put it at like maybe 15% chance to win that game, just from him deploying.
So
yeah.
So at this point, then, that brings us to a point now where we're at 9th. And it's been some time since last February. In fact, it's almost been a whole year. The world has changed since then, but so has the game. We're now in the 9th edition. We've had Space Marine Codexes, and all the supplements have come out, or have been, rules spoiled or whatever, for our different Marine friends. And Space Wolves have also come out. Now, I've heard some things about Space Wolves being spicy. I've heard other things about Space Wolves just being mediocre, or like bottom of the barrel Space Marines, which is still like a really good barrel, considering it's still Space Marines. But
Space Marines.
yeah, they're still Space Marines, so they're still good, but that they are not as good as the rest of them. First things first. Yes and no. Okay. My first question is, how have Space Wolves changed from 8th edition? Like, what makes them different from their previous "we don't use your codex" counterparts?
So Space Wolves in 8th edition, the only way they were strong is if you ran 4+ impulsors, and you could get your troops. Basically, you used the impulsors as a screen. They flew at the time. They had -2 to charge. Like, they were just fully loaded, super cheap, really stupid model. And then if you took like 4 or 5 or 6 of them, you could just dominate the table and use your characters and try and win the game that way. It's kind of rough when you go up against like a 8th edition Eldar gunline, which is packed with star cannons and Jinx and Doom. They could really put pressure on you. Nowadays, you don't really need, like, the impulsors are essentially non-existent anymore, rightfully so. So you can't really use them anymore. So now Thunderwolf Cavs have had to come in and take that place. Initially, when the edition came out, I played probably, I don't know, I want to say like 60 games of Space Wolves before the edition even dropped. And I was just so hyped on them. Until I started playing, until more codexes came out, and then you realize that they're not as good. You can still win events with them, like, no doubt. I've won events with them.
Sure.
But it's really uphill battle, and then you need things to really break your way, which is, for the most part, how 9th is. Because if you don't go first against like a guy that's really on the same skill level as you, in those later rounds, you're kind of, I can't remember what some of them are like. You're at a 72% chance to win if you just go first in some of those missions with the specific armies. So,
mind you, a lot of those armies do also have the opposite problem where they go second, they tend to lose pretty drastically too, right? Admech falls in that camp, Tau falls in that camp really hard, despite the fact their win rate's terrible. Their loss rate going second is super high. Yeah, it's abysmal. So, like, how often does that end up being the case, or is it just like Space Wolves?
I don't want to blame things on just going second and losing. But like, any army can go second and win, but Space Wolves, the reason they're able to be relevant is because of infiltrators and incursors and these the Helix adept. Basically, is just so stupid that you can just constantly do that. Infiltrators are super cheap for the threat they, like, basically they're there to just deny the entire board. And they buy you time. They're like Nurglings, essentially. They just sit there and they don't really die because you can't shoot at them, because you have to shoot at Thunderwolf Cavs and you have to shoot at Terminators and all the other garbage that Space Wolves have. So they're good for that, but they have some really bad matchups against like demons. Demons can just steamroll them.
I'm assuming demons with access to stuff like Big Bird Magnus or like other bigger, chunkier things like that, or Keeper's Secrets?
It doesn't even matter. 3 Keeper Secrets will definitely make you a really sad boy. Anything with Death Hex, basically, anything that can spam out like lots of mortal wounds. Things that are fast, mobile, hit hard, and can run away, like the double Demon Karen list, really bad for Space Wolves because they can just jump in there, and all of their stuff is what is it, like D3+3, or I can't remember. Basically, they just one-shot Thunderwolf Cavs. So they just walk in there. Every single fail is a dead Thunderwolf Cav, which is real bad for you. The game is coming out with a lot more D3+ or D6+, or just flat 4 damage stuff. Whereas
Yeah.
when the edition started, there wasn't a lot of flat 4 damage. So Thunderwolf Cav were great because you have that added amount of durability. Now there's a lot more flat 4 or things that are essentially flat 4, which just pick up your Thunderwolf Cavs.
Yeah.
They're still good, but I don't think they're that good. They're not as durable as they're touted to be.
Oh, especially with the Storm Shield change, right?
Storm Shield change helped them and hurt them because before, most of the time they were just you were losing so many wounds to like las guns and bolters and
Sure.
just things that were just shouldn't wound them, but you're gonna roll 2s and 1s. Now you're not taking that same damage, but now there's flat 4. Eradicators just, Eradicators aren't great into them, but there's a lot of stuff that's high AP, high damage, so it's going to cut through. You fail, you have one turn of bad rolling, it's over.
Yeah. And like,
So,
even then, still high amounts of attacks with at least a little bit of AP, so bolt rifles, Astartes chainswords, stuff like that can still put in some work against them.
White Scars are...
Oh god. Yeah. they make magic happen.
Yeah, double lightning claw, white scars, or plasma inceptors. Again, they're just nightmare. They're too cheap for what they do.
Yeah, I mean, them and Eradicators are maybe a bit too cheap for what they do. Space Marines have got some very cost-effective units right there.
Yep. So I think that they're not the bottom of the Space Marines for sure. They're not, because Blood Angels are worse than them. But they're kind of in the middle of the road. I still play them. I still love them. Right now, I'm just playing Demons because I just didn't know Chaos as well, so I wanted to play something different. That's the only reason I did that.
I'd love to talk about your opinions of Blood Angels at this point, because, like, they look really good to me. But if you think that they're trash, we'll move right along. So
I wouldn't say they're trash. They're Space Marines.
Right. They're still
like,
great.
If you want to talk about trash, you look at Tau or you look at Guard. You can't even talk about trash until you go all the way down there into the bottom of the dumpster that's on fire and then pull out Guard and Tau.
That said, like, it's interesting that you think that. I really do think that Blood Angels are cool, but this is not about that. You still decided, however, that Space Wolves are not your thing for this season, and instead you said you moved on to Demons. So what is your demon list? Like, we know that your demon list has Magnus. We know that it has Morty, just from talking about maps earlier. But what is the concept of your list? Like, what is your list, and what does it kind of like roughly do? Miniard Vort, let's go.
It has Magnus, it has Mortarion, it has 2 big birds, so 2 Lords of Change. One's a tank bird, so it has the 3-up Invuln, the Aura of Mutability, so it's basically 6-up Feel No Pain.
That heals,
and then it also has the Reduced Damage by 1. And then it has the... I put a sword on it. I regret it because the sword's kind of shit. It's so... it's just so swingy, whereas the flat 3 staff is so much better. But I wanted to try it out. And then the other bird is Lord of Flux, which is the DPS bird, basically. It's doing +1 mortal wounds to everything you do.
Okay.
30-inch smite. What else does it do?
You can't see my face. I think I recoiled.
It has the rod of something or another, the Soul Eater staff. So basically, every time it kills a model with a mortal wound, you roll on a 4-up, it gains a wound. So it has its own regen built in.
Yuck.
And then it's just 27 Nurglings. Super easy list.
27 Nurglings and 4 big demons. That is, I hate it.
It's just, and I have obviously Warp Time, Death Hex.
Well, at that point,
on Magnus.
Yeah.
And I have Blades of Putrefaction, Miasma on Mortarion, and then the big birds both have the same spells, which is Bolt of Change, Gaze of Fate, and Infernal Gateway.
Yeah. So effectively, just a bananas amount of mortal wounds coming out of 4 different demon princes. One of which can also, like, both of which can Barney, but one of them can Barney harder than the other one. To borrow from, I think, Bone from TTT. Anyway, and the list just hits really hard with the 4 characters it has, and then a bunch of extremely annoying Nurglings. I hate that list so much, yet it works so well. Could you describe, like, generally how the game plan works for that?
It works differently for different opponents, but, like, let's say I'm going against Space Marines. If I go first, I just basically fully buff up my army, ideally outside of any kind of deny range that they might have or stratagem they might have. So like when I played Black Templars, I just deployed, brought Magnus within, or Mortarion within the 24 inches, and then I put Magnus 0.1 inch outside of 24 inches. But since Mortarion's base is so huge, there's a lot more movement there. So I
Yeah.
just warp time him from there and then toss him in there. But failing a 6-inch rerolled either dice really sucked. It's the only reason I essentially lost that game. It cost me 38 points.
Oh.
Just failing that one. But other than that, you basically just, depending on the opponent, you can use Magnus and really jump him forward, do all of his, do a 2d6 smite, and then warp time him backwards to safety, and then use the birds to 30-inch smite. The tank bird doesn't really care about being shot. He'll live through almost anything, except for like mass, like sisters, meltaguns, or anything like massive amounts of melta.
Yeah, and even then, a 3-up invulnerable save is gonna, with a 6-up feel no pain that heals, is pretty tough to get through. It's gonna take a lot of army to be able to shoot that thing down.
It should. And then, the birds basically are just there to control the board, smite things off of Mortarion or Magnus, and then Mortarion is there for just to kill hordes, basically, because the list, like, the birds only have 5 attacks each, so they can't really cut through a horde, so they can get bogged down with, like, by Tyranids or Necrons or something like that. But if you throw Mortarion into 20 warriors, he kills 20 warriors.
Easily.
So he's got the chain sweep, or I can't remember what it's called, the scything talons, or whatever. He basically just does a sweep, 21 attacks, hit on 2s, wound on 2s, reroll 1s, mortals on 6s. It's just tons and tons and tons of damage. And he's got a 2d6 grenade, so it helps.
Yeah, again, like on top of Lantern, which is, not an awful pistol.
It's a pretty funny pistol sometimes.
There are times it's like, oh, I sniped the character. Nice.
And then against, like, Marines, you just toss Mortarion directly into their face. And then Marines don't have a screen. They don't have things that they just want to lose. So if you toss Mortarion straight into them, first of all, his aura is going to hit the important things, no matter what it's hitting, because at the start of the combat phase, you roll on 4-up for everything within 7 inches of him, and it takes D3 mortal wounds. So you just you throw him in the front of his army, and you're getting like 3, 4, 5, 6 different units every single fight phase, and then you blast the first unit off the table, consolidates into the next unit, and then they have to kill this thing, or they just lose the game. And then the whole rest of the army is just allowed to just sit there and endure.
And it's relatively difficult to kill at all. Like, between the Nurglings and...
pretty tough to kill. Nurglings, I mean, if people were to focus Nurglings, I would lose a lot more games. But people don't. So,
which brings us, I guess, to weaknesses in the list that you might have noticed. So, what are some weaknesses?
Hiveguard can kill so many Nurglings, but most people will just shoot at the big guys, because they feel like if they don't shoot at the big guys, they lose. But ideally, what you do is you just shoot at all the Nurglings. So even Space Marines, you should just be firing like plasma into Nurglings, or Eradicators into Nurglings, unless they're like Raven Guard, which is like real bad for any of my models, because they're just I think they're getting like +1 to hit or something like that, +1 to wound.
Like with the successor chapter, it's definitely +1 to hit exists. And if they do that with +1 to charge, then their first turn charge is assured, pretty much. Like, it's disgusting.
It can be pretty bad if you go up against an army that can really just remove all your Nurglings really quickly. Like White Scars, if they just throw a unit straight into Assault Dock right off the bat and just kill like 20 Nurglings or 10 Nurglings, if you make a mistake and you deploy too many of them close to each other, it's over.
Yeah, and the Pants brings up the actual tactical doctrine bonus that Raven Guard get, which I completely forgot about, which is +1 to hit versus characters in Tac Doctrine.
There you go.
That's brutal against your army. Yeah,
very brutal. I played against a guy that used that against me, and I barely won that game. And it was only because my Mortarion, basically, I went first and I got my Mortarion into him, and he exploded and killed like his apothecary, and he killed a bunch of other things essentially on the way out.
It's not where you want to be.
So, but that was the only time I've ever had something point at the tank bird and one shot the tank bird, and I was just like, holy, this is insane. Now I understand why people complain about eradicators.
Yeah, especially if they're Raven Guard, because, like, ouch, okay.
That was pretty bad. Or salamanders. Pretty bad.
Salamanders with the +1 to wound is good, but the +1 to hit
Nuts.
would help too. Yeah. That's some pretty insane amount of power level there. But that's just from one army, and Raven Guard don't tend to pop up super often. At least in our stats, we have. I don't think we have any in the league from what we have here. So
you shouldn't.
There is one, I think. Or
yeah, there might be one, maybe two, but I think the majority of the Marines are White Scars and Salamanders. Which, again, makes sense. We had our winner from last season pop on in our first episode and talked about how White Scars were good. And how they played Salamanders in the previous season, how they're playing White Scars now, because Vanguard vets as White Scars are grotesque. But, yeah, I do think that this, like, has some pretty interesting things going on, but it does have a weakness in that a lot of the points are wrapped up in 4 things that deal damage, and then just a bunch of little things that will never kill anything. To save their life. Yeah.
There's weaknesses. This list is not a 6-0 list. It's like at best 5-1 list, 4-2 list. I built it because it was fun. You know,
that's important.
I did not build this to win this event. I said that even in their chat. I said my whole team is playing this list, and none of us expect to win the thing. I'll be happy if I leave my pod because it's just a list I wanted to play. And it's dead. It's dead on arrival. The second the Death Guard Codex comes out, it's dead.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, okay, first...
You can't take the... Mortarion has to be your Warlord, so you cannot no longer have a tank bird.
Right. Makes sense.
So it kills it. It was fun.
That and Disgusting Resilience has changed, so it's not a 5-up Feel No Pain. And I wonder how that's going to change the demon side of things, with Nurglings not having... Like, eventually Chaos Demons are going to get their changes too, and if Disgusting Resilience isn't renamed, so that way the Nurgle Demons get still the same 5-up Feel No Pain, or if they just get the -1 damage treatment, which would be really weird, that's also going to change things pretty drastically. But yeah, you said that you built the list to have fun. How important do you think it is for you to build a list that you think you're going to enjoy over a list that you saw is winning events? Like, if you had to pick between the two, obviously we know your choice, you picked the fun one, but how important do you think that is?
I mean, it depends on the person. It depends on personality. For me personally, it's not important. I don't care if I enjoy playing a list or not. I hate losing. I hate losing more, like, I can't stand losing. I can't stand losing at anything in my life.
All you want to do is keep on winning?
Yeah, I hate losing so much. So I build lists that I think are the strongest possible list with whatever faction I feel like I'm playing. So I love Space Wolves. I wanted to be number 1 at Space Wolves in the ITC. And until COVID shut me down, I was. But, it is what it is. So now that I'm not able to play Space Wolves in any meaningful manner, like playing online, it's cool, but as anybody who ever read that Reddit post I made, which was the one asking if ITC should count online events or not, I basically got roasted for like 500 posts.
I remember reading that post, and I thought that was actually kind of a cool way to do things, but apparently the internet did not agree.
No, the internet, because they're just people who play one game and then they want their models painted fairly well, I guess. So it can be important. Like, it matters for you to build a list that you are comfortable with, that you know, that you have to have some sort of attachment to this army. Like, I mean, I guess you don't have to, but for me personally, I love Space Wolves, so I play Space Wolves. I could just go and play White Scars. I have access to a full White Scars army. I don't play them because why? I don't want to play them. So I played Demons because I wanted to play Demons, and Demons were absolutely a nightmare on my server. I run my own server. They were just dominating everything on my server. So I decided to try them.
Which then brings up a question: how does one beat Demons? Then, do you think?
I mean, playing Space Marines. I'm,
Just play Space Marines.
I can't remember the stats, but you go first, obviously. You just
That's
kill the
10%
Nurglings,
increase.
basically. You got to kill the Nurglings. You focus Nurglings on any of these lists. You got to kill their OBSEC models. You got to go out fight them on the OBSEC models. You got to focus on the mission. If you can ignore the big stuff, you ignore the big stuff, and you just go for playing the board, playing the mission. Don't put all of your eggs in killing a 3-up invuln reduced damage model. Like, just don't even pick a secondary based on that.
Yeah.
If they have 4 big models, pick engage on all fronts. Don't pick Oath to the Moment, because you don't want to be sitting in the middle with all your models. You can just pick stuff. Deploy Scramblers. They can't defend that. Essentially, you're just going to get 10 points on that every single time.
Yeah.
Anything that is allowing you to spread out across the map, focusing on Nurglings. Don't take grind them down. Don't take anything that relies on killing more, because Nurglings sometimes will just not fail 5-up invulns.
Yeah.
So it's tough. Like with my Space Wolves, I've only beat them and it's just essentially I saw mistakes and I capitalized on them and I got lucky, basically. If you're playing against a player, he's not going to make that mistake again. So the second time I play him, doesn't make that mistake, and then I'm really in trouble.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like an old-fashioned 8th edition Knight list, back when Knights were good. Where, like, as long as you can get rid of the Loyal 32, you have a much better chance of dealing with the fact that there's these gigantic stomping Knights all over the place.
I mean, there's other lists that can deal with it, like, probably Harlequins. Don't really care about them. I'm not unsure. I haven't really played it into Harlequins. I'm assuming it's kind of... I mean, the demons don't really care about Harlequins invulns, and the Harlequins don't really care about all these mass models because they're just firing fusion pistols at all of them. So
yeah.
It's kind of a weird dynamic. I just haven't really tested many games.
I think that the Harlequins are weaker to mortal wounds than the demons are. Just in general, though, like that Magnus or Big Bird Smite can do a lot of work if it's allowed to, and it's hard for one Shadow Seer to deny it all.
If they just see a guard gunline, like if you were to put that list down and say, "Oh, I'm playing against Acadian guard gunline," okay, I'll just pick my models up and go home. You're done. You are so done. They'll just Relic of Lost Cadia, Vengeance for Cadia, and your models are done. They're gone.
Yeah.
Demolisher Cannon's gonna fire 12 shots, hit 12 shots, wound 12 shots, and you could be like, how much damage is that? Oh, 42? Okay, I'll just pick this guy up.
Just 46 damage later, ouch.
Yeah, I mean, it's exaggerating, but like a guard gunline can definitely do that to, especially with like manticores and stuff like that. They can definitely absolutely devastate a demon list, because they're built to do that. That's the whole purpose of Vengeance for Cadia and Relic of Lost Cadia and stuff like that. I don't think it's balanced, and I don't think it's healthy, but it's there.
And that's kind of how the old codexes were, right? New codexes tend to be a little bit better on that front and seem to be, like, they don't have quite as many I win buttons that are just like one stratagem wide.
Yeah.
There are still a couple, though. Blood Angels do have that one against Black Legion that just makes them absolutely monstrous. Against that faction specifically, and that's it. I think those will be still around for flavor, but yeah, we'll have to see how Guard changes in the future and all that stuff. But that's maybe a topic for another time. Who knows? Maybe I can somehow convince Araver to somehow bully Brandon Grant for hopping on here when that happens. That would be an achievement. Okay, Joko, is there anything you'd like to ask John before we get on to doing some list analysis?
I had some questions, but I kind of forgot them. So, not really. Like, my main question would have been to how do you deal with Harlequins, but as he said, he didn't really play it against Harlequins. So, yeah.
Yeah,
no, unsure.
Yeah, theoretical. That said, is there anything else you'd like to add, John, before we move on to some list analysis?
No, I've talked too much as is.
Well, I don't think that's the case. We brought you on because we want to hear you talk, but okie doke. So let's go ahead and get started with our first list analysis. This one is brought to us by no clue.
The first one was, how was it? I think that was Lord Solar.
Okay. Well, it makes sense. It's an Adeptus Custodes list. We got our, the list is not all Adeptus Custodes though. There is some Guard and there is some Admech. Interestingly enough, let's take a look. So to start things off, there's a patrol detachment of Adeptus Custodes with the emissaries Imperatus Shield Host. We got a Shield Captain on Dawn Eagle Jet Bike, with the Captain Commander, Salvo Launchers, the Strategic Mastermind for the extra command points, their Superior Creation, they got the Auric Aquilus, like they're just the big stabby bike man. They got Sagittarium Custodians, so the ability to just run around and shoot things, and then on Fast Attack they got the Agamatus Custodian. I have no idea what that is. Is that one of the ones with the jetpacks that fly around? I think so. Either way, they got Twin Lance Pulsars, which are, like, I think those are effectively heavy bolters in terms of their stat outline. Correct me if I'm wrong, no chat, please. Then after that, we got another detachment. This one is the Admech detachment. It is what seems to be a fast attack. So Outrider detachment. This one's got a Tech Priest Engine Seer because it's the cheapest HQ slot they've got. And then just a bunch of Cerberus. Lots of doggos. They got 8 of the Raiders, so these are the ones with the carbines that want to go ahead and snipe your characters. And then they've got another couple of Sulfur Hounds to be able to get out that flamer stuff. Then you got an Outrider detachment from the Death Corps of Krieg. Very crazy. They've got a Rider Squadron Commander, with I'm assuming a horse. They got 2 elite bits with more Rider Command Squadrons, and then a bunch of more Rider, just a bunch of horses. So this is effectively a list of bikes, jetpacks, and horses. What do you guys think about this list? Let's start off with Joko in this case.
I think it's going to be really damn annoying to play against this.
How so?
It's fast. The Serbian Raiders, like the Admech Wolf Cavalry, or what are they? They are just so damn annoying. Like, they can take the board on first turn because they have a forward move or scout move.
Yep.
It's called. And they have 3 wounds. Like, so they give the board control to the Custodes, which they severely lack. It's just kind of annoying to play against.
No,
I'm
it's
not 100% sold on the Death Corps of Krieg detachment, but I don't know much about them, sadly.
So, one thing from chat, thank you for telling me, Protoculture 11, what an Agamatus is. It's a bike! So even more things riding on top of things. The Twin Lance Pulsar is a strength 8, AP -2, damage D3. Cannon on all the bikes, I mean, they're custodian bikes. They're not going to be that bad ever. That said, does anyone remember what Forge Will Lucius's deal is? Is that the one where it's like spend a CP and you can deny a power, or is that a different one?
That's not the deny of power one.
No. Okay, I don't remember what Lucius does then. Jeez.
It's combat based.
Oh, well, I mean that would make sense, I guess, maybe.
I rarely see it, so I don't know.
Lucius ignores AP -1. They're defensive. Okay, so they got Salamander's armor. Thank you again. Thank you, LP Curie. I appreciate it, the help. From my perspective, the list seems like it's got a lot of very fast-moving multi-wound models. In particular, the Cerberus Raiders are really, really good for their cost. They're 3 wounds apiece per model, and at 150 points, you get, 8 of them? That's solid. 9 of them, even. That's really, really good. That's a decent number of wounds for those kinds of points. I wish I could get something that cost-effective for that number of points. That said, it does seem to lack a little something. It does have some anti-tank in the form of the one bike squad from the Custodians, but very little else. And effectively, you're asking your Death Corps or Krieg to just effectively survive stuff, run around, tag things. I don't think they're going to do a whole lot of damage, despite the fact that the Death Corps Hunting Lance could maybe do some damage. It's probably not going to do a whole ton, and if they get charged in turn, they're going to get wiped out very easily by a dedicated combat squad. The Cerberus Raiders are impossible to charge, but do go down relatively easily to the majority of firepower. And then the Custodians have one big thing, and that's about it. And then, yeah, I don't know. It seems like it's really fast. It seems like it's powerful. It seems like you keep your opponent stuck in their deployment zone like Harlequins do. But then, past that, I'm not sure what else this list does off the top of my head. I don't have enough games to know. What do you think, John?
This list is built to it's engaging you on its terms, not you're engaging it on its terms. So if it's up against a combat army, it's tough to fight against it because you're not going to be engaging those bike custodians on their terms or on your terms, because the raiders are going to be in front of them. They're going to be heroically intervening. I don't know if those bikes fly or not.
Yeah, all custodian bikes do.
Okay, so they can just use stooping dive on you and really essentially fuck with you if they really want to. I don't know how they are in combat, but they're custodes, so I assume they're not bad. So it's really durable on the custode side, ignoring -1 AP, very strong, because most of Marines' guns are only -1 AP, other than the big stuff, which you don't really want to fire into 9 raiders. It feels like a waste. And Death Corps stuff, I mean, I could just take it or leave it. It's doing essentially the same thing, except worse as the raiders. But you can't take any more raiders, so why not just take that many riders? What it's ignoring, it doesn't have any obsec here other than the custodes, unless I'm missing something here.
No, you're not.
You're gonna struggle against something that has like durable board control, or something has Rights of War and has a bunch of Space Marines with durable bodies sitting somewhere on objectives. Like, that's a little bit worrying.
Yeah.
Its shooting is a little bit worrying, but it's just playing the board. It's a cool list.
Mm-hmm. One thing I do like about it is that they do have a lot of those Cerberus Raiders with the ability to snipe. If they have important characters that are even relatively squishy, this list can absolutely nuke them from orbit. So if you're relying on like individual characters to survive, something like an apothecary or whatever, these Cerberus Raiders can absolutely do the damage to take them out. Which, like you said, they can engage on their terms. I like the list too. I think that it's a bit skew heavy, but considering you're dealing with a very strange kind of list here, I think it could work. It's just that it does seem like it's a bit frail for about 2/3 of the list, and then the other third of the list is durable enough, but there's not enough of them to really make me feel stupidly threatened about them. The only thing I'm worried about on the custody side is the bikes.
I mean, the raiders are durable just by nature. It's 918, 27 times 3 wounds that ignore -1 AP. Like,
yeah.
It's so many wounds, they're just flooding the board with just wounds. And if they really want to, they can just shove you into a deployment zone with them and then say, oh, you can't charge. Well,
yeah, Protoculture agrees.
Ideally, you can't charge them. You could set yourself up so you could still charge them. But it's tough.
Have OBSEC, right? The custode bikes.
The custodes part has OBSEC, the rest of it doesn't. Actually, I don't know if the custodes do. If they're in a detachment with other things anymore. I have no idea.
Think that
I'm assuming they do.
I'm positive the detachment does. Like old rules, the detachment gets OBSEC.
I think it's a pretty good list. I think a lot of things will struggle against it. It just plays the board well.
Yeah, I think it'll catch a lot of people off guard. I do think, and it moves really fast, and like you said, it'll just drown them in their deployment zone. And chat, again, agrees with you. Go figure. You say smart things. Let's move on to the next list. This list is brought on by Dr. Bro, who's playing, and it seems like it is just a Space Marine list with a bajillion dreadnoughts. Let's get started. So, this has a captain. The captain is made stupid cheap to have the Teeth of Terra, a jump pack, and Storm of Fire. Storm of Fire is an interesting one. Effectively, just like it's the point, and if you shoot that thing, you can get an additional -1 AP if you roll a 6 to wound. They got Primaris Librarian. They don't list the powers on here, but one can assume it's a 5-up invulnerable save. Is a part of it. The Fortress one is really, really good.
Yeah, Psychic powers are Psychic Fortress and Might of Heroes.
Yeah, that makes sense. The detachment has 1 Intercessor Squad, because why not? And then we get into the actual meat of the list. We've got 2 Leviathan Dreadnoughts, which cost the CP each. They got the Volkite Calivers, Storm Cannon Array, and dual Storm Cannon Arrays, so a lot of firepower. Really, really painful. And for mention here, it does not say which chapter they're from, but one can assume it's Iron Hands. Primaris, then in their next detachment, they've got another Vanguard detachment here. This is it has 2 Primaris Tech Marines, one of which has the Adept of the Omnissiah, and is the Master of the Forge. Gets additional warlord traits and all that stuff as well, so they've made this thing into an absolute support beast. It has the ability to heal 3 wounds a turn, guaranteed. It can do a whole bunch of stuff. It's nice. Then, with 2 Tech Marines, you can actually repair a whole lot of stuff all at once. 3 Invictor Tactical War Suits to just shove you into your deployment zone and do a lot of other damage. They're actually still quite good. And then Redemptor Dreadnoughts, because Redemptor Dreadnoughts have been pushed super, super, super hard. With the double onslaught Gatling Cannon loadouts, Icarus Rocket Pods, and Storm Bolters to be able to just march up the field, shoot things, remove chaff, and then if they need to remove things with their hands, they can absolutely do it with the 3+D3 damage. This is a durable list, and for my initial look at this thing, it's just a horde of dreadnoughts. It's a whole lot of dead people in walking, talking coffins being backed up by a captain that gives them -1 AP, a 5-up invulnerable save, the ability to get repaired by 2 different Tech Marines, and then just a whole bunch of other nonsense. I think it's a really funny list. I think that if a list that does not have the means to deal with this many vehicles, they are absolutely going to have a bad time. But it does give up, some serious secondary points. John, you go first this time. What do you think about this list?
What is this list? What is its standings right now?
Good question.
Let me check.
Yeah, please do, Joko.
Because, my initial thought, it's a skew list, it's not very good.
3-1, surprisingly, but it's... Yeah.
It's a skew list, so if it comes up against the things that counter it, it's done.
Yeah, 100%.
If you come up against something that can just remove your invuln, you're done. If you come up against things that can get on you immediately, like White Scars, something that can just get right on top of you, Null Zone, Death Hex, something that can make you fight last too, though your fight last rules are kind of weird. If it can get onto you right away, this is really bad for you. And those maps we saw are not good for Dreadnoughts because you have to go all the way around these big L's. The line of sight are not good. Sometimes for shooting. So if you get the wrong table with the hard counter to you, you're done.
It's
and
also
only
only
not
got
much you can do about it.
Yeah, and you got 5 CP to play with by the end of it, right? Because of the way that they've made their list. It's -2 CP from the Levy Dreads. You got another -3 from the Vanguard detachment. You got even less CP because of the Primaris Tech Marine eating up another one. So it's like 5 or 6 CP to start off with. 6, now that I do my math properly. 7 on your first turn. It's not a whole lot. It's enough, but it's not a whole ton, which means you can't use a whole ton of your stratagems to be able to keep yourself alive or keep yourself rolling. And if anybody comes in with like any sort of anti-tank that's relatively durable, or that can sit in the back, or that just does not care about 24-inch or 30-inch range guns, yeah, no, this list is gonna have a hard time. Particularly the poor Invictors, who are, if you play them badly, gonna die within like no time at all, and then just give your opponent 9 points. Which is maybe the other big thing, is that this is extremely vulnerable to secondaries, I think.
Yep. I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I don't think they have rights of war, right? They don't.
No.
So
they have Storm of Fire.
There's no OBSEC here again.
A little bit. They got an intercessor squad. Just one. It's right there.
I don't know.
I don't think this is a good list, but I have a soft spot in my heart for full vehicle-based lists.
Yeah.
And yeah, like this is pretty much an alpha strike list. If you go first,
Yep.
you are probably going to win because you just deal a really huge blow. You are going to put 3 Invictor tactical warsuits in their face.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's a good list because it has its obvious weaknesses. If someone is gonna play the mission, they are gonna win. And yeah, but it's a nice list.
So
those Invictors, I don't think that they don't deploy those up. They
No.
put auto cannons on them, so they're sitting somewhere in the backfield.
yeah, they can deploy wherever they want to outside of the
They
deployment
can.
zone, but they'll probably stay close to the deployment zone.
Yeah, if they had the flamers on them, they'd be essentially telegraphed. Oh, these are deployed way up the table.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I love the idea, though, just having all these boxy robots marching into your opponent with guns or whatever. It's pretty sick. You got 5 of them marching forward. You got at least 2 of them hanging in the back and putting out a really disgusting amount of firepower. Storm cannon arrays are not to be laughed at. And it is fairly durable, especially if it is Iron Hands. Like, this stuff is difficult to get rid of because of the doubled wounds, 6 of Feel No Pain, the repairs. Yeah, like I like it actually in a lot of respects, but it definitely has its weaknesses. This would be a fun one to watch being played. So Dr. Bro does mention that it's a funsy list and that he got through his pod, and he's 3-0 at the moment. But once he gets through, he is out. Well, congratulations. I'm impressed. I think it's a fun list. But Protoculture does bring up a point that most armies could not deal with this many dreads. I think that demons would have a hard time being able to kill them, but would absolutely outscore them, which is probably the issue. This number of dreads can put up Sun Daka, but it's not going to be enough to kill however many Nurglings plus however many Demonettes or whatever else is on the board, coupled with like the amount of mortal wounds that are coming out. Like, they will eventually start killing these dreadnoughts, and you don't have the obsec to stop them from getting it primarily on. That's maybe the biggest weakness I think this has, is that a horde list could actually do some damage. Let's take a look. Oh yeah, go for it.
Much auto lose against both Harleys and Chaos Demons.
Oh god, yeah. Harleys, I forgot all about Haywire for a second there.
It's not even Haywire, it's just a fusion pistols.
Well, the combination of both of them would absolutely just nuke more than half your army in one game, like in one turn.
Harlequins could pick up a lot of this army very quickly.
Yeah. I can imagine a Harley list could take out 3 of the Invictor Warsuits right out of the gate, and then easily probably pick up another one of the other bigger dreadnoughts. But that does put them at risk. Because like in order to do that, it does put you in immediate Redemptor Dreadnought revenge range. But like at that point, you're already winning. They're not moving on to objectives.
Yep.
Okay, next one. This is a roster called Untitled. Very creative. Joko, it's a Tyranid list. Who gave you this one?
I put in the names next to the list in the chat.
Wow, I'm very smart now. So yeah, this is by Marius Evander. We do not have the score for them yet. But Joko, how are they doing so far?
I don't think they're doing well.
Ooh. Well, let's see if we can find out why.
I see Tyranid Warriors, I know why.
So, starting off this High Fleet Leviathan. Leviathan is the 6-up Feel No Pain as long as you're in Synapse range. So they got a Swarmlord, sure. It's got Onslaught, it's got Smite, it's got Catalyst, no big deal there. It's got 1 squad of Ripper Swarms, and then 2 massive squads of Warriors. Trying to make them as difficult to kill as possible. I'm wondering if Jormungandr might not have been a better pick in terms of High Fleet for those 2 things, but I think that John points out maybe the bigger problem, that Tyranid Warriors are not very good right now. Elites, you got a Lictor. It's meant to go ahead and help you deploy Scramblers. Heavy support, you got 2 squads of Biovores, and then we are into a patrol detachment, and this one is Kronos, and go figure, it's got a Neurothrope, Ripper Swarms, 2 squads of 6 Hive Guard, and then
I see why it's struggling.
God.
2 squads of Hive Guard instead of just 1. Sky Slasher Swarms, which is flying Ripper Swarms, and then 2 Exocrines. Okay, so, John, you said you know why they're struggling. Would you like to go ahead and explain what you think are some weaknesses of this list?
I mean, it has 12 Hive Guard. Right away, how much points are 5-6 Hive Guard?
Well, it says right here, they are 300 points for 6 of them, which is a lot.
So he's just wasted 300 points on models that are essentially not efficient at all. You only want 1 unit, so you can Symbiote Storm them, you can fully buff them up and shoot at something twice.
Yeah, and that way you only have to worry about hiding 1 squad instead of trying to hide 2.
Yeah, it's just not good. I play against Alex McDougall all the time. He's like one of the best Tyranid players in the ITC, and I asked him the same question: why don't people just run 12 Hive Guards? These seem so good. And then he immediately told me I'm an idiot.
Long story short, you can't buff 2 squads.
Yeah, they're not good. Tyranid Warriors are just not durable. They don't do enough damage. They don't shoot well. It's the worst of every world. So I just don't get them. Anything that really is dedicated to killing in combat, like White Scars will just roll in there and pick up that whole unit. They might roll in there and pick up both units.
Yeah.
So it's not a deterrent, and your Exocrines aren't adaptive, so they're not really scary. There's a bunch of mistakes here, in my opinion.
It's worth mentioning that Marius is the one who wrote the list. He mentions that Tyranid Warriors are more durable per point built this way, with double scything talons, than any other Tyranid troop that there is.
I mean, Tyranid troops are not durable to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't they be better as Jormungandr and with +1 to cover saves? So they have a 2-up saves against shooting that don't ignore cover.
Yes and no. Depends on how much you value the 6-up Feel No Pain they get from just being Leviathan. Since they're Synapse creatures, they affect themselves, and they give themselves that. But I do think that Jormungandr would be interesting so long as they're just moving normally, without advancing or anything, or charging. You do get a cover save, which is, pretty good. I like the idea behind the Tyranid Warriors. I do agree that they're super durable. Like, for 200 points, that thing is not moving to shooting. Not easily. And, if something lightweight tries to come at them, it will not work. That many Scything Talon attacks is still pretty nasty. That said, they are fairly weak. A 4-up save, toughness 4, and 3 wounds is nothing that the meta can't handle, just because of the fact that we're dealing with Marines here, which have the same toughness 4 and multiple wounds. People are prepared for this, which is a shame. And especially with the 6-up Feel No Pain, they've got a 6-up Feel No Pain and Apothecaries. So, the Tyranid Warriors are kind of being handled with this meta a little bit, but I do see where they're coming from, and I do like them. As durable units for 9th edition, that's important. It's just that all your kill units then are these ranged units, right? You have your 2 squads of Hive Guard, your 2 Exocrines, and 1 Swarmlord.
I think biggest problem is that they are just going to melee, the warriors most of the time, and you can't buff 2 Hive Guard sword, and the point for redundancy is it's just more wasted points. I think you need a more upsec, I think, or the big.
Well, I think they actually have upsec coverage.
I mean, I wonder what you could do with 300 points as a Tyranid player. I wish there was a Forge World model that was under that cost. That's really good.
Yeah, no. I think that the only thing that I would change from this list for okay, not the only thing, but I like the list overall. I might be the only one here that does, but I do think that the idea of having these Tyranid warrior swarms just kind of they have a massive footprint. They are relatively difficult to deal with from shooting. And yeah, they go down to a stiff breeze in melee, but for 200 points, that's relatively cheap. You're getting these 9 warriors for the same amount that a Space Marine player gets 5 Terminators. It's a lot of model there to have to punch through, and you're not going to get through that easily with just pitter patter firepower. You actually have to put in some dedicated stuff there. And I like how they hold objectives. It really is, though, the Hive Guard. They need to have more things that ask questions, because right now 2 Exocrines, 2 squads of Hive Guard, and a couple of residual Ripper Swarms and a Lictor are not going to ask the questions that a Tyranid player needs to force their opponent to answer. You don't have like you said, the Dimecron. You don't have Hieroduals or anything. You don't have anything fast that will cause a threat to anything on the board. You just have some shooting in the back, which is good shooting, but it's still weak to the same things that they've been weak to for the longest time. Exocrines and Hive Guard. I mean, 1 squad, 2 Exocrines and a squad of Hive Guard plus 300 points of something else or whatever would have been, I think, a little bit stronger if it was made to be something that was a little bit more attacky. It needs to be more aggressive, I think, to be able to allow the Tyranid warriors to just kind of sit there and do their thing, which is literally just sit there, sadly. Maybe even taking the Tyranid warrior squads and having one big one, but then having a bunch of smaller ones to run around onto other objectives and just be durable onto those objectives, so that way you have a little bit more MSU going on to allow you that more board presence, and then you have that big squad of Tyranid warriors to just march in the middle and be as durable as possible versus shooting. And then have that counter charge hiding somewhere in the back, maybe? I don't know. I like the idea of the list, but I think that there's some more fine-tuning that needs to happen.
I think you just take all the warriors, you slide them in the garbage, you take a bunch of rippers, and you go double Daima.
I'm trying to be nice here. I'm trying to be oh, no, there's some cool ideas. Let's give it a shot. And John's no, just melt them down and make terrain out of the plastic. Yikes.
I love the models, but they're not. They're just not that good.
Sadly, you're correct. Unless if you're going to go ahead and go with the customized Hive Fleet, which allows them to get the -1 AP on the Scything Talons, at which point then you start having some interesting things going on. 3s rerolling 1s to hit, 4s at AP -1. It's not bad. That can actually do some mincing. But, yeah, I see your point.
You're never getting to combat on your terms with those, though.
No, they're too slow, sadly. Remove the second Hive Guard and the third Exocrine, then... I'd remove like, I love the Biovores. The Biovores do some interesting stuff with the ability to, like, launch mines.
Chronos, they would.
Yeah, in Chronos, I think that would be a little bit more potent. But, actually, no, you want them to miss. You want them to miss, that way the Spore Mines are causing movement blocking issues. The main, like, I would say, like, honestly, remove one of the Hive Guard squads for sure. The ability to pick up a battalion in this, and, like, honestly, you would be fine just making almost all of this one battalion. Almost, if it weren't for the fact that the Tyranid warriors need to be more durable. Like, I don't know Tyranids well enough. All I know is that 2 Hive Guard squads is bad. You need to only have 1 so that we can continuously buff it. And that chances are you want to go ahead and actually buff one of the Exocrines to have that 5-up invuln, because otherwise it's too vulnerable. Did you mention the slashers for engage on turn 1? No, I did not. But my only issue with the Sky Slashers at that point is, what are 3 Sky Slashers going to do on turn 1? Oh, just to engage on all fronts for turn 1, and that's it? If that's the case, that's 45 points for 2 victory points. That's not the worst, but yee.
Sure. I mean, Rippers could do that turn 2.
Yeah, which he does have 2 squads of Rippers. It's something. But, like, again, I love a lot of the ideas going on in this, but I think that it needs some refinement. You only really want to have to worry about 1 squad of Tyranid warriors. You don't want to have to worry about 2 squads of Hive Guard. And you definitely need something that asks stronger questions against your opponents to force them to make bad choices, which then you can punish. The Swarm Lord also feels a little bit weird here because of the fact that he doesn't have anything outside of Tyranid warriors to use his Swarm commanding power on to allow them to move twice. There's no Gene Stealers, there's no nothing crazy like that. And so, like, he could easily have been replaced with, I don't know, anything else that's cheaper. Like, even a Hive Tyrant could have worked at that point, because the Flyrant can actually do some stuff. I don't know, man. But, like, there's some great ideas here, and I'd love to see how your games are going. I'd like to see how the games are going. I'd like to watch 1 or 2 of them, and I'd like to know what Trevi thinks about this kind of list too. He probably agrees with John here on the Warriors, but we'd have to ask. Okay, let's do the last one. So, thank you, Marius Vander. I don't want you to feel like this is just us shitting all over you. But yeah, thank you for the list, and we do appreciate it, and I hope that this was actually important. Metabolic Overdrive Hormagaunts over Swarmlord, I guess. That maybe. If anything, that could be worthwhile. All right, this last one. This last list is brought to us by Protocultures, who's gone 4-0 with this thing. What? Yes, and yeah, and then after this, we're done. So, let's see. To start things off, we've got ourselves a patrol detachment that has a blank shield host, but we got Custodes, right? So, we got ourselves some Custodes, they've opened the vaults, and they got a shield captain on Dawn Eagle Jetbike. It's got the Orc Aquilus, Strategic Mastermind, Superior Creation, and a bunch of Hurricane Bolters. Cool. Custodian Guard, 5 of them with Storm Shields. Sagittarian Custodians, 5 of them too, so you got some DACA on top of that. Elites, you got some Prosecutors, which are the Sisters of Silence, okay? I like the idea that we're actually starting to mix in some Sisters of Silence. I like those models, and importantly, I do think that they're an interesting, cheap option that Custodes normally wouldn't have. They got a Vexillus Praetor, with a Guardian Spear and a Vexilla Magnifica. So that's the -1 to hit Praetor, if I remember correctly. And then Fast Attack, you got a bunch of Venatari, a bunch of Virtus Praetors, which are the bikes. And then you've got a Telemon Heavy Dreadnought, along with a Null Maiden Rhino to bring the Sisters of Silence around. And it's meant to be Shadow Keepers, so those are the guys that roll 3 dice on the charge, I think, if you use the stratagem.
Shadow Keepers.
No. Which one is Shadow Keepers again?
It's the best one.
Well, it's the best one, right, but I keep in mind, I haven't played against a whole lot of Custodes that haven't just immediately run me over anyway. So, for those of you that don't know, Shadow Keepers is... What does it do? Is that the charging one? I'm trying to look it up, but I'm being really slow. If anybody knows off the top of the head, please let me know.
I think they had a -1 strength, but I'm not 100%.
Shadow Keepers, strength.
Yeah, -1 strength.
-1 strength. Okay. Yeah, that one's a really, really good one for making them durable.
Something like that.
And 3d6 of the Dread Host. Thank you, Protoculture. Alright, cool. Now that we have that down. So these guys have the -1 strength to be targeted, to be, from shooting and stuff like that. That makes them exceptionally durable. They have a really balanced list. Lots of ability to kind of deal with people from a distance. They got a strong core with the Custodian Guard Squad. That's super durable. They got the ability to run around, and they have like their action monkey in the form of the sisters in a rhino. The Telemon Heavy Dreadnought is a definite problem that your opponent has to deal with. It's fairly powerful, to say the least. The Virtus Praetors can get up in your face and do some serious damage. The Venatari Custodians are running around doing a decent amount of damage as well. I like the list. It's relatively durable. The Vexilis Praetor allows you to have a really strong core, like sitting around a relatively difficult moving castle, coupled with the ability to hit flanks and create opportunities for the Custody player. What do you guys think about this one? Joko, you go first this time.
I think it's better to have like 2 instead of 3 custodian guards, probably, so you can spread them out more. Actually, they might not be needed with the sisters because they can hold the black line of black objective.
Yep.
But I don't agree with the new Metal Rhino. I don't think you need. It's better served to get 4 custodians, basically. I like the bikes, but I think the custodian terminators are better. The Artilleans or the.
Okay.
I don't know. And yeah, I don't know much about custodes, so.
Oh, that's all fair. John, what do you think about the list?
I mean, it's a nightmare. Like, there's a reason this list is 4 now.
Yeah.
Finally, you've shown a good list.
Ooh.
This list is built to win this event. You have the Custodians. They put out so much firepower. They can deal with hordes, which this event apparently just has lots of hordes.
Yeah.
So those guys can just absolutely shred hordes. They're going to endure on objectives forever. I'm not entirely sure what the sisters do, but I'm pretty sure that they're just there for random actions, scramblers, and all of that kind of stuff. -1 to hits, -1 strength when targeted, super strong. Venatari are absolutely insane. Venatari will just absolutely win you a Space Wolf matchup just by themselves. Every time they fire at 5 Thunderwolf Cav, they kill 5 Thunderwolf Cav. Their shooting is insane.
Yeah, those are the ones that fly around with the heavy bolter effectively attached to them, correct?
They fire essentially heavy bolters, except they fire twice, so it's like 18 shots times 2 or something like that.
Yeah.
Hitting on 2s or 3s, I can't remember. I've played them recently. It's not good. Very good unit. Fast, just short range. The Virtus Praetors, they all have salvo launchers, so those are melta-guns. They're picking those because they are worried about the tanks and stuff like that. So if they do come into like tanks or anything like that, it at least helps them a bit because they do have just randomly 5 salvo launchers in there. And the Telemon Dreadnought is a Telemon Dreadnought.
Yeah.
So I think that this list could totally win this event, without a doubt.
Yeah.
It has the ability to play the mission. It has the ability to kill hordes. It has the ability to kill heavy things. It can endure on objectives. It plays the mission well, and it doesn't die, and it doesn't give up secondaries.
That's, I think, the big thing. The fact that it doesn't give up many, if any, secondaries at all means that it's hard to score against. Unless if you decide to spread around the battlefield and go for stuff like deploy scramblers, engage in all fronts, and all that stuff, which you kind of have to, but then that means that you're isolated. Easy pickings. You're not working together to kind of deal with these things. And you, against Custodes, you need to be able to have an entire army to be able to just jump down one of these units at a time and wipe it out. And hopefully you've done enough to actually kill it. And, you made your correct choice. And as a result, you're able to actually start winning the game. But that is so difficult when Custodes have the ability to stop rerolls and do all this other stuff. The -1 strength per phase is insane. It makes them extremely durable. Yeah, I agree with you. This is a list that is meant to be as cutthroat gets. I think that their only weakness is the same weakness that all Custodes lists have, which is that they tend not to have a whole lot of footprint. It's really just the 10 Custodian Guards, effectively, the Sagittarians and the Custodian Guards themselves. But even then, the Sagittarium can sit in the back and shoot and still be effective, and the Custodian Guard squads can walk into the middle and be like, come at me, bud. I've got a 1+ save, a 3 up invulnerable still because of the the way that custodians work. Yeah, like the list is very strong. And the -1 to be hit, which I forgot about for a second. This is just a really nasty list. I hate everything about it. The piece of tech I like is the Null Maiden. The Null Maidens, the Sisters of Silence, can do some really techy things. I think baseline they're just action monkeys, but they also can run around, get you engaged on all fronts relatively quickly. That Rhino still has the smoke launchers, the old-fashioned ones, so you don't need to spend CP on it. The sisters themselves can target psychers, so if they have an important psyker or something like that, it's not a great way to do things, but 5 bolters will do something sometimes. Against the weak enough psyker. They can do mortal wounds to grenades, that kind of stuff. The Rhino can grab stuff, engage and charge stuff, move and block monsters, be the closest visible for psychic spells as well. Yep. So yeah, there's definitely some play there, and it's relatively cheap. Like Joko mentioned earlier that I'd rather buy more custodians, but for 135 points, what are you going to buy that's a custodian?
Not much.
Yeah, that's true.
So, like, what are you going to do with it?
Thinking about it, with the -1 strength stat, the 5-man custodian guard squad is actually better.
Yeah, no, it's insanely good at that point, because you're just getting value out of your stratagems at that point, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what custodians need to do. If they start going MSU, they have to spend their CP like way too often for them to be useful past turn 2. This way, the CP can be focused where it needs to be and where it has to be without being wasted on anything. Like, I really like this list. And being a Tau player, I would hate to play against it. Being a Necron player, I might be able to handle it a tiny bit better, but not much, because this can still handle everything my Necrons can do. But I think there's a lot more play there.
Basically, how you beat this is you start them out of CP and pick off anything that they just overextend with.
Yeah, exactly.
And play around them, because actually they are not even slow because they got the bikes. So yeah, it's scary.
It's really, really good. Do your game and like your bikes and jetpack Venatari just do what they need to do to hit the flanks and hit them where they're weak. Once they've made a mistake with positioning at all, you pounce on it. Okay, and that's the end of that one. Thank you, Protoculture, for the list. We super appreciate you going ahead and exposing your list like that. If anything, it's really cool to kind of see these lists and have everybody listening, get something out of it. But that is going to go ahead and end the show for today. Normally, with Arrowver on, we have enough content to go on for another whole hour. We don't have that today. We also need to get a move on because I'm hungry. So, yeah, that's it from us. Before we go, though, I'm going to go ahead and just toss the floor over to John to go ahead and plug his own stuff. John, where can people find you, talk to you, speak to you, and hang and ask you questions about everything we talked about today? Where can people find you online?
You can always find me in the Goonhammer Discord, because obviously that's where I'm hanging out most of the time answering questions. I run my own Discord. You'd have to actually ping me because it's hard to, you can't just find it. It's called Northern Front Community. That's the community I've started in Winnipeg with my team. And we're growing like over 400 members now. We're running a major right now online.
Nice.
But yeah, mostly Goonhammer. You can also find me in random arguments with idiots on Reddit.
Including whether or not ITC should be counting online tournaments and stuff like that. Yeah, okay.
Yep. So I'm usually around somewhere, but for the most part, I've removed myself from most social media. I just can't stand it anymore.
Fair enough.
Getting old and grumpy.
Fair enough.
Still, that's about it.
All right, so Goonhammer Discord, and then from there you can try to join in on the community there and argue with him about all kinds of things. Excellent, and on Reddit. Perfect. Joko, where can people find you?
They can find me on the TTS server. Just message me. I'm not really up anywhere else. So, yeah.
You can ping me there too. I don't know if I'll respond because I get a lot of pings, but I am in that Discord as well.
He's so popular. And then, if you guys want to...
mostly people calling me idiot.
Well, you know what? If it makes you feel any better, I do that all the time here on my Twitch channel. If you guys want to see me play games, of variety kinds. You can find me on here. I'm also on the TTS Discord. As far as our tournament organizer goes, remember that's Eravor. If you want to go ahead and speak to him as well, for judging questions and all that stuff, he's available as well. We'll be back next week, but for now, that's it for our show. Thank you everybody so much for watching. We hope that you folks enjoyed yourselves. If you did, be sure to let us know. Send some feedback on the TTS Disco, and then let Eravor know. Thanks again for John K. for hopping on from Goonhammer. He has written many articles over there, including some really helpful ones, including why you should join a team to practice and how to get started competing. Please do check those out. LP Curie, thank you. I will be finishing my alpha matches this week. I kind of have to, lest I become excommunicate Traitoris. And that's it from us. We'll be back again this week about the same time, 5 p.m. EST. 10 p.m. Greenwich Standard Time. Look, I got nothing. I haven't lived in England for years. I'll talk to you guys another time. Thanks again. This has been the Alpha Pod podcast, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye for now.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely, dude.